And we end the show with a story from Britain, a country that keeps outdoing itself, and not in a good way. The British government has unveiled a new refugee policy. Here's how it works. Imagine you're a refugee arriving in Britain. You reach one of their immigration centres. Your goal is quite clear. You want to secure asylum in Britain and hopefully begin a new life there. Well, it may not be possible anymore. A new British policy lets the government deport refugees to a third country. Guess which one? Rwanda. Now, the obvious first question is, why Rwanda? It is located almost 6,500 kilometers away in another continent, which is not exactly convenient. So why is Britain sending refugees all the way to Rwanda? No answers. But listen closely to their plan. Britain will have no responsibility vis-a-vis these refugees. They will live under Rwandan law. And even that is not a guarantee. Because once they land there, the government, Rwanda, will decide whether to grant asylum or not. If you get asylum, you can live there for 5 years. After that, you must find a new home. If you don't get asylum, you'll have to leave. So Rwanda is doing all the heavy lifting. Then what exactly is Britain providing? It's giving a one-way ticket, that's it. And this scheme is problematic for two reasons. Number one, the audacity to dump refugees into an African country. They're not even trying to hide the racism. Listen into the Prime Minister, listen to what he said, Boris Johnson, defending his policy.
This is about making sure that we break the business model of criminal gangs who are not only risking people's lives, but undermining public confidence in legal migration. We want to stop the illegal migrants from coming in. We want to deter the criminal gangs because they're not only endangering their lives, they're ripping them off.
It still doesn't answer the question, why Rwanda? Boris Johnson says criminal gangs are smuggling refugees into Britain. Maybe they are. And Britain has every right to deport them. But why to Rwanda? Why not a European country or a North American country? Because they would never accept these refugees. So what does Boris Johnson do? He ships them off to Africa. That's problem number one. Problem number two is Rwanda's own political situation. Remember, these refugees are looking to start a new life. They're not there for tourism. They're there for safety. Does Rwanda guarantee that? Far from it. Rwanda has among the worst humanitarian records in the world. They persecute the LGBTQ community. Government critics, opposition leaders, you get the idea. So why is Britain sending these refugees to Rwanda? Simple answer, to save money. Britain's asylum system costs around $1.8 billion. Around $5 million of this is spent every day on housing alone. Compare that to the new program. Britain has managed to strike a deal with the Rwandan government. Total cost, $140 million. Britain will invest this money in Rwanda. In return, Rwanda will host deported refugees. Let's not call this a refugee policy. Let's call it what it is, a financial transaction where humans are commodities. The policy was personally approved by Home Secretary Preeti Patel. She flew down to Rwanda to sign the deal herself, but implementing it will not be easy because activists are up in arms. They filed court cases against the new program. Some of these hearings are underway. If the court does not raise an objection, the first flight to Rwanda will leave on Tuesday. 11 refugees will be on board that plane. Activists are hoping for a favourable ruling. They believe the policy violates international refugee laws.
Our concerns are that the policy might not in fact be lawful, that it might contravene international refugee law and human rights law. And we think it's very important that the case is heard and this is properly determined before anyone is sent to Rwanda.
Guess who else is opposing the scheme? According to some reports, Prince Charles. He described the refugee program as quote-unquote appalling. Now, if this is not a wake-up call for Boris Johnson, I don't know what is. The sign of a monarchy that perfected slavery and colonialism is criticizing your treatment of refugees. It doesn't get worse than that. And I'm not saying that Britain should welcome every refugee or that it should throw open its borders. That's for the government to decide. That's fine. But this is not the way to do it. You cannot dump refugees in Africa and forget about them, or pay your way out of international commitments. But Britain does not seem to care. In the 18th and 19th century, they sent prisoners to an obscure island in the southern hemisphere. Today we call it Australia. It became a dumping ground of British prisoners. This refugee policy is no different. Britain is turning Rwanda into a dumping ground of refugees. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.